Welcome guys! Today I bring you another video in which I want to show you how you can use local models to repurpose content for social media. Let's get into it. Imagine your company creates a lot of long-form content, so webinars, roundtable events, articles, white papers, you name it. And you have a strategy behind it to break that content down into smaller pieces that you can use for social media. So you can use local models to facilitate that job and make it easier for you. What we're gonna be doing today is we're gonna be using this.
People in power who haven't understood their why can lead us down some dark tunnels.
To break it down into smaller pieces and create a couple of pieces of content that we can reuse for our social channels. Now that we know what we're doing today, we have our project set up over here with a couple of libraries that we're going to need. So the first one is the YouTube Transcript API, and the second one is Ollama, because Ollama is hosting the models that we're using for this. I have a couple of simple PY files over here that are doing the heavy lifting, and I'll show you how they work in a second. The first thing that we need to do is we need to get the transcript from the YouTube page, and that's why we needed the previous library. The full URL for our podcast is here, and as you can see, it's from the diary of the CEO. But what is interesting to us is the video ID. So once we have the video ID, we're gonna invoke the method over here, and we're gonna fetch the script with these few lines of code. Once we have that, we're gonna save that content into our file. I'm gonna save that file as a transcript.json, so I can later on use it to repurpose the content. First things first, I need to make sure that I have my UV environment activated. If you don't know what UV is a super simple package management system that is super fast, and I recommend you to use it instead of pip or conda or anything like that. So using UV, I'm gonna do UV init, and as you can see, I already have initialized my environment. And if I were to do UV sync, as you can see, what it's doing over there is auditing my packages, making sure that I have them in my virtual environment. So all I need to do now is activate that virtual environment like this. Okay, now to run the command for this piece of code, I need to do UV run get transcript.py, and as you can see, it's done it super fast. So we have now the transcript over here. We have a few of the lines, as you can see, that we've got, and the full transcript is over here. It's a full string. But you can see over here that we have the timestamps for every single one of those moments in which the voice is being spoken, or the people are talking. So now we can use this to summarize everything and break it down into smaller pieces. Now I have over here my second PY file, and what I'm gonna do is, first of all, I'm gonna import my Ollama libraries, and then I'm gonna load the transcript, which we have from the previous step. So we have our transcript.json that it's loaded as a raw file, and then because I'm only interested in the strings, I'm essentially removing all of the timestamps, and I'm doing it like this. Now I have created this other method over here in which I'm breaking down the pieces of content to be reused, and I've selected over here 2 snippets. So when I run this function, I want the system to return 2 snippets or 2 pieces of content that is created from the original content. As you can see, I have over here a role that is the user, my model, which I'm using the new Qwen 3 30 billion parameters with the 3 billion mixture of experts activated system. What I want to do is break down the 2 snippets posts for social media, specifically LinkedIn, from the transcript that I'm going to provide. I'm giving it a bit more context as to what can it do. So 5 things that I learned from this podcast or this episode, 3 things that I realized that I'm doing wrong, or I wish that I had known this before, etc. I wanted to quote things from the podcast to make it more entertaining. And finally, the full transcript. Okay, now something that we need to be aware is that the conversation with Michelle is almost 2 hours long. So there is a lot of content over there. When I run the actual length of all of the tokens, we had roughly 80,000 tokens, which means that for a smaller model, if you try to do this in local models, you will lose completely the context. So the system or the model will revert back to its training system And no matter what you try to instruct it to do, it will essentially revert back to summarizing. So all it will do is just summarize the text, and it won't do it very well, because the longer the context that they need to keep, the more difficult it is for a smaller model to keep track of it. And it doesn't matter the length of the context, or if it's a chain of thought model, it doesn't matter any of that. What it matters is the amount of parameters that it's got, so you can keep all of the context itself. That's why models like Photo Mini or any of the proprietary models that are run in the cloud that are much bigger do tasks like this much better. But you still can do this with a local model, and you can do it to keep all of your data within yourself. Now, because I've said that it will lose all of the context, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trick the system. I'm going to break it down into smaller sections, and then I'm going to create summaries of those smaller sections. So for that, I'm using the polyvalent Llama 3.18 billion, which I really like for tasks like this. As a system prompt, I'm telling it that it's really good at summarizing content, and I want to make sure that it breaks down whatever it gives into a reasonable summary. Now, lastly, what I need to do is I need to create another function that divides the content and it conquers it. So what I've done is I've broken it down into pieces of 10,000 tokens or chunks. As you can see over here, I'm iterating over here to create those chunks. And lastly, I'm joining them all together with this function. Once that's done, then we're going to use the original function that I've mentioned above to repurpose the content and create the two pieces of content, and we're going to dump them into this file over here that, as you can see, I've run already, but we're going to run it again to see what we get, okay? And we run it with UV repurposing.py. And because I put some hints in the code, I can see exactly what it is in the system. So I'll see you in a bit when it's all run.
A few moments later.
And boom, it's ready. So we're gonna have a look at what we have over here. First thing to notice is that, as I mentioned before, the Qwen 3 model is a chain of thought model. What that means is that you will see these think tags always at the beginning of it, in which it follows along all of the information that I've given it. The idea behind it is that the model should behave better than non-chain of thought models for this type of tasks. So as you can see, it's reading that it needs to generate 2 LinkedIn posts and so on. And over here is using the initial context that I've given it to then craft the final post of the pieces of content, right? You could use this for X, you could use it for anything else. Now, the tag finishes here, and after that we can see that we have this post one, and it's following along the instruction that I gave it. So 5 things that I learned from this podcast episode, and you can see over here that it's quoting things from the podcast, and it basically it's just a good way of using what you have available to then expand into short form content. The second one, it's also doing the same thing. I wish I had known this before. So it's talking about racism, the story with her family belief in resilience, and so on. There are multiple applications for things like this. This is extremely simple, and I've simplified it to the smallest possible iteration so you can understand the technicalities behind it. Imagine that you have lots of webinars, lots of content. You could do this and you could create perhaps a learning hub. So you could train people and use that for people that learn in different ways. I really like the way that AI is capable of breaking things down into different formats and systems, meaning that for learning is fantastic. I personally use it in my personal life to learn about different topics. I find myself more curious about things. So let me know in the comments if you like it, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.